today is the eve of his presentation of credentials as Ireland's ambassador to Bangladesh. So we'd really like to congratulate him in advance, and thank you very much for your contributions as we celebrate this auspicious occasion together. We would like to continue after the keynote speech. It will be followed by two very distinguished discussants, Professors Lailafor Yasmin and Parvez Abbasi. The discussions will then be chaired and conducted by Dr. Iftikhar Chowdhury, President of Cosmos Foundation and former advisor of Foreign Affairs, Bangladesh Caretaker Government. Mr. Inayatullah Khan, the chairman of the Cosmos Foundation, will provide the closing remarks. And without further ado, I would like to invite Ambassador Iftikhar Chowdhury to proceed with his role as the chair. Thank you very much.
Welcome our keynote speaker, Ambassador Kevin Kelly in Ireland. And we're there today to cite various sayings from various different parts of the world. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor glow of night, I think, or whatever, the gloom of night. Gloom of night prevents us from having the show go on. Ambassador is also, as you heard, presenting his credentials tomorrow, and I should like to congratulate him in advance. Those of us who have had the privilege of to represent our countries in foreign parts seem to get energized by the spit and polish associated with the diplomatic drill of such occasions. We see this as a befitting initiation to our new responsibilities. I'm sure Ambassador Kelly will exercise his with great skill and in the finest tradition of Irish diplomacy. We Bangladeshis, Bengalis, and the Irish are bonded by strong values. One, of course, is our passionate love for freedom. Both our peoples, the Bengalis and the Irish, struggled for decades till our aspirations found fruition in the achievement of our sovereign identities. For Ireland in 1922 and for Bangladesh 5 decades down the line in 1971. A second shared value is the desire and the ability to express individual and societal emotions through the medium of literature. We all know of the close camaraderie between Rabindranath Tagore and W.B. Yeats. Both their literary careers played out against the backdrop of the struggle for political independence and the appetite for nationhood. On the global matrix today, Ireland has established itself as a state actor which is recognized as having fought against poverty and hunger at the heart of its policy. We are hopeful that within the European Union, Ireland will help shape European policy in a way so as to smoothen for Bangladesh the aftermath of the LDC graduation. Also, Ireland's decision to recognize Palestine is a true sign of the commitment to a peaceful and humanitarian global order.
Assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all our distinguished guests to the Ambassadors Lecture Series organized by Cosmos Foundation this afternoon. Today we shall focus on the subject Bangladesh-Ireland relations, a prognosis for the future. We are privileged to have with us here a very distinguished keynote speaker, Ambassador Kevin Kelly. Tomorrow will mark a very important day in terms of our bilateral relations. It is a day in which Ambassador Kelly will present his credentials to the Honorable President. With that will begin, I am certain, a new chapter in Bangladesh-Ireland relations. I wish him every success in all his endeavors during his term of office. Ambassador Kelly brings with him vast experience in government and diplomacy. An alumnus of Queen's University, Belfast, and University College Dublin. He is currently Irish Ambassador to India, accredited to some other South Asian countries. Earlier, he had served in the same capacity in the Netherlands and also as a special envoy to Africa. He was Director, Humanitarian Affairs at the ministry, which gave him considerable exposure to development activities. He is no stranger to Bangladesh. Indeed, we spent the last St. Patrick's Day in Dhaka with him when he had accompanied the Irish Trade Minister, Mr. Simon Coveney, to Dhaka. On that occasion, we were able to witness what an erudite speaker he is. I'm happy to say this year has been a remarkable one in terms of our bilateral relations. Minister Coveney's visit was a very successful one, in course of which he has also made a very rewarding call on Honorable Sheikh Hasina, our Prime Minister. Thereafter, earlier this month, Bangladesh and Ireland held our first ever Foreign Office consultations in Dublin. There, the first memorandum of understanding on biennial consultations between the two foreign offices was also signed. Important discussions were held between Bangladesh Foreign Secretary Masood bin Momen and the Irish Secretary General Joseph Hackett across a broad range of activities, including climate cooperation, investments into renewable energy, including offshore wind and energy plants in Bangladesh, as well as on the Rohingya issue and possibilities of intake of Bangladeshi students into Irish universities. Indeed, both sides have been able to identify the areas in which our potential cooperation could deepen. I would add to this list sports, in particular cricket. This is an activity which engages both the youth and adults of both countries in one way or another. As the Honorary Consul of Bangladesh, I shall make every possible effort to contribute to these efforts. We would also like to obtain the valuable advice of the thought leaders of our community on these issues. This is why seminars such as this are organized, so that the civil societies of both our nations can also share with the public authorities their views. It is our hope that Cosmos Foundation will be able to organize, with the collaboration of Irish academic institutions, such deliberations in Dublin as well.
Dear Masood, Honorary Consul, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor for me to be here with you today to take part in this dialogue and to speak with you about the potential for Irish-Bangladeshi relations. I want to say how grateful I am that all of you made the effort to come, because as we were driving here, the trees were coming down. There was, I was saying, surely nobody is going to be able to manage to come, but we see we've got quite a healthy attendance. So I really wanted to say, in my language, Garamila Mahagav Galer Lahaig Vehenu with us. So just to say thank you very much for coming. And I think that with the appointment of Mr. Masood Khan as our Honorary Consul, we're going to get to new heights. Ireland was one of the first countries to recognize the newly independent state of Bangladesh in 1972. So it's taken us a long time, but I'm finally delighted that we've managed to at least open up our first honorary consul, and it gives me great pride to see the Irish flag and the Irish escutcheon outside of the honorary consulate here. It's a small start, but it's an indication of our growing commitment to Bangladesh. We greatly value the work that honorary consuls do for us all over the world, and I know Masood is going to be a great addition to Team Ireland in South Asia. So thank you so much, Masood, and for the warm welcome. It's my ambition, of course, to make full use of Masood, not just in the provision of visas and consular services, and we can discuss that later, but also in helping us to open up doors for Ireland in Dhaka and beyond. Opening up doors to government, doors to the business community, and also doors to Bangladeshi civil society. And this is why I was really keen to speak at this dialogue today. It's a real pleasure to meet with you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have a dialogue and listen to some of your suggestions about what I can do to strengthen this relationship. Our Honorary Consul already said we had a really good visit by our Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, Simon Coveney. He came here and celebrated St. Patrick's Day in Bangladesh, and he officially opened up the consulate. And that visit was remarkable in a couple of ways. It was remarkable because when he flew back to Dublin, he resigned. I'm not sure if everybody knows that. There was a change in our government. Our Prime Minister stepped down, so he resigned. He was one of the most senior members of our government. But the fact that he brought such a high-powered delegation, it really did open up eyes and focus minds back in Dublin about the potential for developing our links, not just with India, but also with Bangladesh. We also met with the Foreign Minister, Mahmoud, and I think we might have even caused the Foreign Minister to delay his meeting with the Crown Princess of Sweden. So I'm very proud of that especially. But there was real substance to the visit. And as Masood said, shortly after that, just 2 weeks ago, we had the Foreign Secretary flying particularly to Dublin for consultations. So by all accounts, those discussions that took place in Dublin were very, very fruitful. My colleague Katie from our management team in Dublin was part of those discussions and can give you an insight in terms of it, but I understand topics as diverse as China, the US, Russia, migration, visas, a whole range of bilateral political and economic issues were discussed. Bangladesh, we're a small country, but as has been said, we do have a very proud history of having recovered, like Bangladesh has, from colonization. The only difference being we were colonized for about 900 years. I think Bangladesh, you had a much shorter period of colonization. But we've made great progress in that time, and I think part of these visits and these relationships is about finding ways that we can share experiences. And so one idea that emerged from the meeting we had in March was that there was a big interest in Dhaka from learning about how Ireland, we have had some success in promoting foreign direct investment into Ireland. We've gone from being the poorest country in Europe when we joined in 1973 to now the wealthiest country in Europe. And partly that's to do with the economic model that we adopted, the supports that we've put in place. And in the meetings that we had, in particular with the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Rehman, very interested in learning from that Irish experience, and we're happy to share it. We have a renewed commitment to Bangladesh. We have a new Asia-Pacific strategy. It was just launched last year. And it's about renewing our commitment to engage with the region wider than China. I think in the past there's an acknowledgement that perhaps a huge amount of our focus in the wider Asia-Pacific region went to China, and now there's a real attempt to rebalance that and to look to other countries such as Bangladesh. I won't go through the details of that strategy, but there are over 100 different actions opening up a whole new areas for collaboration, people-to-people links, economic ties, political ties. That's very much about building relationships and building up those people-to-people links. The meetings that we had with the Prime Minister here in March and last week's consultations provided a further opportunity, I think, to flesh out some of those ideas. But this was very much a two-way conversation, looking about how we can collaborate on both sides. We appreciated the generous offer that was made to take up a special economic zone in Bangladesh. This was raised by Mr. Salman Rahman with Minister Coveney. Now, in our case, our Department for Enterprise, Trade and Employment is our lead government ministry in this area. They consider the range of economic opportunities and priority investments for Irish business that will inform decisions. But we will be certainly keen in the coming months and years to look at how other countries have made best use of this model. And today, if there's an opportunity this afternoon, I'd love to hear your thoughts about these special economic zones and what advice you would have for Ireland in relation to this. We are a small, open economy. International trade and investment are enormously important to us, supporting over 1.3 million jobs. In 2022, our trade exceeded €1 trillion. That's the first time this milestone was reached. The small scale of our domestic market, our domestic economy, means that, of course, we rely on external demand and international markets for sustainable and continued growth in order to maintain and create jobs. So our trade policy plays a very important role in promoting our values and our standards, including the positive contribution that trade and investment can make to sustainable development. Bangladesh is situated between two colossal markets in this region, between India and China. We see it as a crucial gateway to ASEAN, much as we see Ireland as being a very good gateway for you into the European Union market of over 500 million people. The significant and sustained economic growth which we have seen in Bangladesh must be applauded. We are very interested in understanding more about your economic model. Bangladesh, in many ways, we see it standing as an example of what can be achieved by hard work and by strategic planning. Ireland too, as I mentioned, we do see ourselves as a success story. And I said that how we've moved from being in 1973 quite a poor, relatively rural economy, backward country, to now being a much more modern force in the European Union. The Irish economy represents a very strong base for several industries, including financial services, life sciences, engineering, pharma, technology and business. Dublin has the regional headquarters and software development centres of many companies owing to the success of Ireland's technology industry. Currently, the country is also the second largest exporter of medtech products in Europe, and it's home to 18 of the top medical devices. 8 of the top 10 industrial automation companies and financial companies are based in Ireland, as well as the top 5 global software companies. So we have, in many ways, in a small country, managed to attract a huge amount of international multinational investment. One of our greatest assets is our highly skilled, educated, and increasingly multicultural population. It's also one of the youngest in Europe. We've one of the best education systems in the world, and it more than meets the needs of our economy. So with our well-connected geographical location and the reputation for highly skilled graduates, this is why many of these American and other multinational companies have European headquarters or manufacturing facilities in our country. And that provides a great opportunity. It's why the likes of Google and Meta, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Apple have all made their home in Ireland. One has to admit that the current economic ties between Ireland and Bangladesh are too small, with just over 540 million euros in bilateral trade per annum. That's a figure we have from last year. But the good news is that figure is on an upward trajectory, and we believe that those figures can be greatly increased. We support your efforts to diversify goods and services trade beyond the traditional predominance of ready-made garments. Although we do know that there's some big Irish companies, such as Primark, that have very successful manufacturing bases here. I note that the Irish dairy sector has enjoyed strong exports to Bangladesh in recent years, and we're open to exploring further areas for economic engagement with Bangladesh. And indeed, while we were in Dhaka in March, one of our Irish companies had a signing ceremony in order to mark the completion of a deal to provide dairy equipment to the Bangladesh army. So I just want to conclude with just a few short remarks on the EU, because in many ways that's one of our big selling points, I would say, as a country, at the very much an English-speaking country, but at the gateway or at the entrance to the European Union. We're a very proud member of the EU. We have consistently the the highest levels of support. There's surveys done every year all around Europe. And as we know, a lot of this kind of nationalist sentiment in some countries, or Euroscepticism as it's called, is taking place in some other countries. But in Europe, we consistently have support levels of over 95% of the population favour our membership of the EU. So we were very sad to see our biggest neighbour and former colonial power, Britain, leaving the EU, because the EU had managed to help build up our relationship during that time that they were there. So it was a big blow for us when the UK left the EU. We hope they'll come back at some point, but we have to, I suppose, respect their sovereign decision. But Ireland will not be leaving the EU. Ireland is fully committed to our membership and to strengthening the EU and to strengthening our role within it. We would like to be a friend for Bangladesh, and I think you mentioned that already, in Brussels. Although we are small in size, perhaps because we're now the last remaining country that English is our first native tongue, we can have kind of an outsized, strong voice around the table. And we would like to be a friend for Bangladesh. I'm encouraged to see that the relations between the EU and Bangladesh are growing ever stronger. And we'd like to do what we can from the other side to help with that. We support the negotiations on a new PCA, this Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, and we know that that will recast a much more modern relationship in terms of political and trade engagement, moving away from aid. We also see real potential in the Global Gateway Initiative, which aims to support climate action and renewable energy projects in Bangladesh. And I think has already been mentioned by our chair, we support the graduation of Bangladesh to the GSP Plus scheme in the coming years. As a general principle, Ireland is supportive of measures to minimize any economic shocks that may arise from graduation from LDC status. We know more than most countries the development path that countries have to go on and the time that graduation takes. So we've been very actively involved in the Council negotiations, and we've always been pushing for flexibility. Beyond trade, I should just also acknowledge the generosity of the Bangladeshi people and the work of the government of Bangladesh in responding to the Rohingya humanitarian crisis. It's something that we're very much supportive of. We have one of our oldest and most respected Irish NGOs, Concern. I'm very happy to see some of them in the audience today, which has a long and proud track record of engagement in Bangladesh. So we do what we can to support the humanitarian work of the government of Bangladesh, doing it through our partnership and our support for Concern. We're committed to the collective response to this long-running humanitarian catastrophe that is the Rohingya crisis. Total funding since 2017 is now at 13 million euros, and 7.5 million of that went to programs with partners here in Bangladesh. So we'll conclude now, and I just wanted to finally acknowledge the very positive and important contribution that the Bangladeshi community makes to Irish life, whether in the hospitality sector, or in the high-tech sector, or in the health sector, in caring roles, or in education. These people actually breathe life into our bilateral relationship, and we want to see more of it. The people-to-people links are vital in terms of any bilateral relations, and we want to see those connections to develop more in the future. I'd love to see more Irish people getting the opportunity to visit this beautiful country, and more Bangladeshis in Ireland hopefully experiencing the same warmth of hospitality that I always receive here in Dhaka. The warmth and hospitality is, after all, a hallmark of both of our countries. So I'll conclude there. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bangladesh-Ireland relationship, most of the issues are already covered, but what I will start off with European Union. That if you remember in 2022, European Union and Bangladesh, they started first political dialogue. And the premise of the political dialogue was that Bangladesh is no longer 1970s Bangladesh, that Bangladesh has moved ahead. It is no longer an aid recipient country only. The relationship is no longer one-way traffic. The relationship, its scope and its breadth, it has reached to a new height. So European Union's starting this political dialogue was a recognition of a new Bangladesh with which European Union wants to work together. So there, and even in other sort of forums, whenever I had a chance to talk with any members of European Union or His Excellency Charles Whiteley, we pointed out, a few of us pointed out, that why there are only 7 direct representation out of 27 EU member countries. So this is where Ireland comes to play, because Ireland, being the wealthiest country within European Union, it has a lot to offer for Bangladesh. What does Ireland has to offer? As pointed out, something that I was going to sort of also discuss, that a number of countries in the world, now they are redefining their strategy towards Asia. They are taking their either Asia-Pacific policy, Asia-Pacific strategy, or Indo-Pacific strategy, however you formulate it. Whether you are taking a maritime vision or a land-centric vision, that's different, but the idea is that the renewed importance, geopolitical, geographical importance of this region has not escaped the eyes of the strategists all around the world. Ireland has also taken this Asia-Pacific strategy. At the same time, EU has its particular Indo-Pacific strategy. 20,000 Bangladeshis now living in Ireland. So what we need in Bangladesh currently, and a much talked about issue, is skilled migration. Why do we lack in producing skilled migrants that will go to not only Middle East or Southeast Asia, but also to Europe and America, and in a legitimate manner, not by crossing the seas. So this is where Ireland can help us. Now, how can Ireland help us here? We can have dual degree program. There are a number of marine academies in Bangladesh, a number of graduates, but because the degrees are given by Bangladeshi institutions, they lack international validity. So we can have dual degree program in these particular areas, and these dual degrees will work in Ireland and in many other countries where there is a real shortfall of educated and skilled graduates. There can be high and semi-skilled training programs where not only the Irish government but also academic institutions and training centers can work in a collaborative manner. Then of course easing of visa for students. This is an issue we always talk about, and of course with Masood, I know we will have to talk later that how can we have a visa processing center here, because to go to New Delhi for us for processing of visa, this is something I've been talking with His Excellency Charles Whiteley, that we have only a limited option here in Bangladesh for processing of visa wherever we want to go to, in Europe. So for Schengen visa, only few countries give us this choice. This is another issue. Then also not only easing of visa for students, because I understand that there is an idea about Bangladeshi students that all of the students are trying to flee the country. But there is a category of people who actually did their degree in other Western countries. They had opportunities, but they chose to come back. For example, the example is standing right before you. So for the academics and for some other categories, can these be thought of? When you are thinking of a visa category, for example, those working in international institutions, international organizations, and scholars who are at above a certain age, they are not going to run away and try to go for some other kind of job. So can there be any special category of visa for them for easing, of course with appropriate papers and other things. So here we can see that a lot of pledging has taken place and recommendations between Bangladesh and Ireland, especially in the first meeting that happened in Dublin. But what we need to see is that to identify what we can learn and to identify what can actually fit in this particular situation and particular context of Bangladesh, because we can learn a lot of issues, but contextualizing is something very important, where Bangladeshi scientists or Bangladeshi scholars can work alongside Irish scholars and scientists. So this is something we need to sort of look into. Yes, trade has taken from 1995, I believe there was a 16.8% growth in trade, and with about special economic zone, an economist is sitting here, he will be better to talk about that, so I won't be dealing with that. Because I'm not supposed to dip my toe in everything. No, I don't know anything about that. So that is another one. So another issue is that with the strategic area, I'll conclude by sort of talk, is that, we have seen recently competition over Bangladesh, it has increased to a different level. It has reached a different height. So a number of actors, starting from America, Russia, China, India, Japan, Australia, they are all trying to make their footprint known, visible here in Bangladesh. I believe Ireland has a fair chance if it can identify what are the niche areas, for example, pharmaceutical, and there are a number of other areas that Ireland can actually sort of identify to collaborate between the two countries. Then again, of course, as I started my talk with maritime focus, you need to see that how Bangladesh located at the mouth of the Bay of Bengal, and it gives you an entrance to Northeast India, landlocked Northeast India, as well as landlocked countries of Nepal and Bhutan. So how you can use this particular, how you can use Bangladesh as a corridor to reach out to these three particular areas. So in that way, Bangladesh can be strategically beneficial to fulfill Ireland's goals.
Now, yes, the Irish have had a dichotomy, because for 200 years they had been also part of the colonizing unit which ruled over the Indian subcontinent, but they themselves were colonized, as pointed out by the ambassador. But it was also because of Ireland that the Indian subcontinent, including Bengal, and we were part of undivided India till 1947, we were influenced by them. I'll just name 3 or 4. One is Annie Besant, I do not know if it has been mentioned, who basically again founded the Indian National Congress, from which all major political parties in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh trace their roots. Another one is a spiritual linkage, which is again Sister Nivedita of Swami Vivekananda, who basically brought Indian spirituality to the global world. And of course, the Easter Uprising and Michael O'Collins, they were also lionized, and it inspired a series of insurrections in Bengal, and young Ireland basically inspired young India and young Bengal. So again, in our independence struggle, the Irish have played a seminal role. And I'm not saying this because, again, this is crafted for the Bangladesh-Ireland relations. And even during 1971, the support that was shown in Ireland and the quick recognition that we got, that needs to be recognized. That is the first 2 minutes of basically the historical context. Now, if we look into the economy, I won't belabor you on this point because it's been mentioned over here. We have a 500 million trade, which is pittance. And again, this is one of the very few countries with which we have a favorable trade balance. But again, the amount of export that we do to Ireland is just what? Roughly 466 million and 34 million from Ireland. And obviously, again, Ireland over here, the things that we actually export from them, the biggest item is basically, again, scrap iron, and then again, malt extract, and again, concentrated dairy. This is where the Irish dairy comes in. And again, obviously, no surprise there, that our ready-made garments, knitted t-shirts, knitted, non-knitted wear, those are the ones of usually which we export. 20,000 diaspora in Ireland and growing. Now, how can we take this forward? And this should be a two-way process, so that even Ireland gains and the volume of trade increases. Let me first of all explore the dynamics of this. And I'm conscious of the sweltering heat. I believe if God was over here, and the first opening lines on the Bible would be, let there be electricity. But unfortunately, our prayers are somewhere it's still in terra firma. Now, the first thing that we would look into is that in Bangladesh, yes, we are going through the throes of an economic crisis, which is no point denying, but we can also learn from how the Irish coped when the Irish property bubble burst. And again, one of the ways that the Irish re-engineered themselves was the way that they basically ensured corporate governance and transparency in the Irish banks. And again, the real estate sector. And this is probably the two areas where we could learn from. So those technical transfer and those expert knowledge, that is where we can basically collaborate with them to firm up our institutional governance, number one. Number two, Bangladesh has at least 25%, 22 to 25% of its population is in the middle income and affluent group, which means there is an increasing purchasing power parity. And one area which Professor Lailufer, as I fondly call her Lailufer Appa, Appa means elder sister, Lailufer Appa had basically pointed out is academia. But how can it be a win-win situation? Now, by conservative estimates, Bangladeshis spend around $6 billion, Bangladeshi parents, on education. There are at least 354 English medium schools, but again, if you registered, but again, if you look about the other ones, it's around 1,700. And there's a huge demand for education in English because it is the global lingua franca. Now, this is where, again, Irish, we can basically engage the Irish because over here, the demand for quality education is an all-time high. And as Ireland is a knowledge-based, highly developed economy, this is one point where Irish schools can start a franchises. And this is, again, because nowadays we have schools with fictitious names. Kingdom of Burundi, for example, or again, but again, Burundi International School, with no linkages to Burundi over here. But if we have, again, and the Irish also played a big role through their convents, the fathers and the sisters who came up as missionaries to spread education. So the Irish education linkage, and again, it would be a win-win scenario. If we have 104 private universities, because again, Appa spoke from the public university perspective, rightfully so. And in case of the private university, there are at least 10 to 15 private universities which are of decent standards across Asia, as evidenced by the Times ranking. Now, these are over there, we can also have credit affiliation and dual linkages, or even better, with the changes in our education policy, you can basically start up, again, overseas campuses. Again, this is one area where there's a huge gap over here, and especially in terms of IT, in terms of engineering, in terms of the hard sciences, there's a gaping hole. So this is one point where we can actually, it will be a win-win situation, and again, there will be steady demand for customers who are willing to pay. Apart from this, which other areas that we look into? Because see, trade in goods is limited, trade in services is infinite, and unfortunately, with Ireland, there is no trade in services. This is one area which Masood and Ambassador Kelly and people responsible in Ireland needs to look into, and even in Dhaka.
A very interesting discussion on the potentials of expanding and deepening the relations between two historically connected nations, Bangladesh and Ireland. It has been a great honor for Cosmos Foundation to host this most significant event. Not so long ago, coinciding with St. Patrick's Day, we were also privileged to receive the Irish Trade and Employment Minister Simon Coveney. That event was also most rewarding. Today, in our deliberations, we have witnessed many important points made, many key ideas surface, and many profound thoughts come to salience. All these have been noted and will be shared with a wider audience through social media, Facebook, and whatnot. I must commend the excellent presentation also made by Ambassador Kelly. He is due to present his credentials to the Honorable President tomorrow. I'm sure that will mark the beginning of what will be a most successful tour of duty as his country's envoy to Bangladesh. It appears from the marks that you have made today that you have a vision with regard to your mission in Bangladesh, which you are committed to fulfill. And I will wish you the very best in the discharge of this onerous duties and responsibilities. I'm absolutely persuaded that there's a great deal that Bangladesh and Ireland can achieve by working together. A good beginning has been made by the establishment of a consulate in Dhaka. Already some benefits are coming to light, Public interest in Ireland has been growing in Bangladesh. The first ever Foreign Office consultations between the two sides held in Dublin recently was yet another milestone along our journey of bilateral cooperation. We in Bangladesh see Ireland as a key member of the European Union. It is one European country that has always had a very positive attitude towards the developing world. It has already established an excellent reputation in the international fight against poverty and hunger. Indeed, this year marks the 50th anniversary of Irish Aid. As an important member of the European Union, I have no doubt that Ireland will render Bangladesh every support in smoothing our transition to a post-LDC phase of development. As an entrepreneur, I see enormous potentials and prospects in the future for the expansion of trade and commerce between our two countries. As a think tank, Cosmos Foundation will continue to provide intellectual platform to the growth and nurture of our collaboration. Time dictates I must now bring this discussion to a close. I cannot do so without thanking Ambassador Kelly once more for the content and quality of your keynote address. Masood Jamil Khan deserves a high credit for the excellent organization of this event. As Honorary Consul, I'm sure he can see this as an added feather in his cap. I also thank two very distinguished discussants, Professor Pervez and Professor Lalafur. Both are my very favorite persons, and they have been a part of Cosmos Foundation, and their presence and participation has always been very lively and rewarding for the audience and for the participants. And last but not the least, would sincerely congratulate the President of Cosmos Foundation, Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry. We are very fortunate to have him as our leader and the President of our foundation for past many years, and we hope we'll continue this journey. And I want to end my concluding remarks by wishing a growing bilateral ties between Bangladesh and Ireland. Long live Bangladesh-Ireland friendship.
Thank you again, His Excellency. And it was very insightful, and you know your diplomacy and your commitment is overwhelming, but it's only exceeded by your kindness and your hospitality. I really appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you again to Mr. Masood Khan, Mr. Inayatullah Khan. Thank you very much, Cosmos Foundation.